All right, all right, all right. Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this session on the state of data and AI literacy. I have here slides. I'm going to remove them from the screen. I just want to look at what folks are saying. Everyone, do let us know where you're joining from. I always love it when people let us know where they are joining from. Getting a few people here mentioning we have Rogerio, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name correctly, from Lisbon, Portugal. Luke, currently grinding through your cleaning data in Python course. I really appreciate that. I had a lot of fun creating that course. Do let me know how we can make that course better. I really appreciate it. We have Ben joining from USVI. I'm not entirely sure how to interpret that. Um, my acronym game is missing. We have Adrian from Romania, Bunaziwa, Adrian. We have Adelea from Nigeria. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Viswanthan from Sri Lanka. Great to see you as well. Anas from Morocco. Marhaba, Anas. Grace from Lebanon. Marhaba, Grace. Good to see you. Um, Carolyn from Tucson, Arizona. Uh, Adnan from Canada. Awesome to see people joining from all over the world. We're seeing all of the continents today. Santino from Argentina. Um, Pushkar from India. Vanessa from New Jersey. It's awesome to see folks joining from all over the world. Andrea from the Netherlands. We're quite nearby from where I am right now. I'm in Brussels. Diego from Spain. Good to see you. Crystal from Pennsylvania. Everyone, do let us know what you're looking to get out of today's webinar as well. I'd love to make sure that we're as much as possible tailoring our content to your needs as well. Haneen from Jordan. Marhaba Haneen, good to see you. And yeah, we're getting folks from Japan, uh, Washington, D.C., Ireland, New York, Syria, Ghana, Brazil, Nigeria, Casablanca, Morocco, Singapore, Zimbabwe, and USVI stands for United States Virgin Islands. That is, thank you so much for teaching me that. I did not know. Germany. Hello, everyone. It's great to see people joining from all over the world. We have Muhammad from Montreal. Good to see you. And we have Hussam from Cairo. Marhaba, Hussam. So yeah, it's awesome to see people joining from all over the world. It's truly pleasure and a privilege to be able to be hosting this session. My name is Adele. I'm VP of Media at DataCamp, and today we're going to be discussing the state of data and AI literacy in 2024, sharing some of the original insights and research that we've uncovered in the State of Data and AI Literacy Report, which we'll be sharing throughout the chat as well in case you want to read more from today's, in case you're interested in some of the insights presented today. First of all, I'll do a bit of an introduction about DataCamp. If you're not aware of DataCamp, our mission is to democratize data and AI skills for everyone. We do so by providing organizations and individuals best-in-class learning for learning data and AI skills. So whether you're an individual looking for a premium subscription or an organization learning using DataCamp for business, there's something here for everyone. We help individuals build work-ready skills so they can apply their skills directly in our DataCamp Data Lab, which is a cloud-based IDE for data work for both individuals and teams. We also provide them the tools to grow and for leaders to grow their teams. So through DataCamp certifications, you're able to certify yourself or your people with the best-in-class data certifications today. This is why we've been trusted by more than 14 million learners and 4,000 data-driven organizations, including some of the organizations you see below. Now, as I said, hello, my name is Adele, VP of Media at DataCamp. I have the privilege to co-host the Data Frame podcast and to, be here, work with the media team at DataCamp to create all of these awesome experiences, whether through our next week's conference on DataCamp Radar, the Data Frame podcast, or these webinars. So it's truly a privilege to be, an interface between, DataCamp in general and the wider data and learning community. That said, let's dive into today's topic. What we're going to talk about today is the data and AI literacy imperative. We're going to talk about why it's so important to build data and AI literacy skills. Then we're going to discuss major findings from our report on the state of data and AI literacy in 2024, which we'll be sharing in the chat. And then we're going to discuss some best practices from leaders who are, at the forefront of data and AI upskilling. And then at the end, we're going to have some closing notes and Q&A. Now, that said, what I want to do, though, is I want to get to know you a bit better. So I have here a bit of a poll. We'll share the results. They're going to be dynamic. We'll see how they will evolve. So what would best describe your role within your organization? So go to menti.com, type in the code that you see here, or QR code, the code that you see on the left here on the slide. There we may have an interference with the register QR code above, so let's see if we can remove that. So we have here 4 profiles. You're either a learning leader, so you're looking how to build your organization's data and AI literacy. You're a team leader, so you're looking to understand how to build your team's data and AI skills. You're a champion, you're looking to convince your team or organization to invest in data and AI skills, or you're a seeker. You're just looking to understand and get a lay of the land. So I'm gonna here open this. I'm gonna present, seeing. I'll let folks answer in. I can see there's at least a few hundred people watching, so let's make sure. I'll show it and show percent just so we can have a better view. So half of us are seekers. We have a champion here, Tracy Dennis. I appreciate your championing. Let us know how we can help you champion better. Interesting, 25%, almost 20. So 20% are almost learning leaders. 12% are team leaders. 12% are champions, and around 54% here are seekers. Maybe for the seekers, what are you most looking to get out of today's session? Let us know in the chat. And maybe for the learning and team leaders, what are your biggest challenges in upskilling folks? I'd love to know. Okay, so it's changing. I'm gonna give it an extra 30 seconds. We can see here. I don't think that the results are gonna change. So again, for those who just want to check it out again, sorry about that. We have, go to menti.com, code 89360810. Okay, I think this settles it. So 25% are learning leaders, 11% are team leaders, champions 10%, seekers are 54%. For the learning leaders and the team leaders, I mentioned, let us know what your biggest challenge is when it comes to scaling data literacy within your organization. And then seekers, do let us know what you're looking to learn from today's webinar. And for champions, let us know how we can help you champion better. All right, this is very, very interesting. So let's get started with, the data and AI literacy imperative that we see today. It's no secret, we've been speaking about this at DataCamp. If you've ever attended the DataCamp webinar, one of the things that we always like to think about is how paradigm shifts in technology lead to paradigm shifts in skills. In the 1980s, computers became much more mainstream within, corporate life, let's say, and within our daily life. So knowing how to use a computer or computer literacy became a very important skill. We take these skills for granted today, but in a lot of ways, computer literacy was a major challenge for folks in the 1980s. Similarly, in the internet age, when software and internet services became much more mainstream, knowing how to use different types of softwares, knowing how to use the internet was also important. And over the past 20 years, I'll expand on this a bit more. The proliferation of data and database technologies made it so that data literacy is a highly essential skill set. And over the past year or so, with the advent of generative AI, I think now more than ever, knowing data and AI literacy is also an extremely important skill set to succeed in the 21st century. And what I'm trying to take out here from this slide is that paradigm shifts in technology, like the ones that we're experiencing today, with the advent of AI or generative AI, as well as the maturation of data, are leading to paradigm shift in skills, where data and AI literacy skills are going to be much more essential for individuals and organizations to succeed and be able to compete in the future to come. And if you look back on the past 3 decades and disruption, and how, how many industries have been disrupted through digital technology based alternatives, or through database alternatives, you see organizations such as, in the money transfer space, organizations such as TransferWise or Cash App disrupt that industry. Personal banking, we now have personal banks that are digital. Payment processing organizations such as Stripe, travel in general, if you think about it, in the past 20 years has been completely disrupted because of services like booking.com, Airbnb, trip actions, etc. And the ability to, for the way we buy flights, for example. um, Retail organizations who can uh, the amount of change we've experienced due to the rise of Amazon, right, and how most of our retail now is online, is a great example of that disruption. And of course, Uber and type of ride-hailing services have completely disrupted transportation as we know it. And the common thread across all of this disruption, at least for these industries here, is that a lot of the disruptors are digital-based digital-based alternatives or services that have usurped a lot of the incumbents within these industries. And as a result, we're producing more and more data, and that data needs to be actioned and analyzed. And as a consequence, of course, and not just talking about these digital-based technologies, but also looking at, uh, the what Daniel Jeffries on the Data Frame podcast, he was the former CTO of Stability AI, mentioned was a neutron bomb in the technology space that was dropped in November of 2022, which is ChatGPT. Right, ChatGPT has completely disrupted a lot of workflows, how we think about skills in the future, and we're still scratching the surface when it comes to the potential of data and AI technologies. So of course, a lot of organizations with the trajectory of innovation that has been happening in the past 3 decades, as well as most recently with AI, have been on the defensive. One of my favorite reports of the year, which is the 2024 Data and AI Leadership Executive Survey by Wavestone, um, essentially asks CDOs and chief data officers what they think are their biggest challenges, the state of their organization's data literacy, the state of their organization's data culture, how far along have they come along when it comes to data-driven investments. And one pattern that is clear is that over the past decade, organizations have been on the defensive, right? They have been needing to, scale their capabilities, their skills, their culture, to be able to compete with these digital native startups that we've seen in the earlier slide. So, for example, investment in data has continuously increased over the past few years, right? So the majority of organizations have consistently increased investments in data and AI initiatives. So, for example, in 2024, 83% of organizations were increasing investments in data and AI. Data now is a codified practice. So if you compare, for example, 2012, where only 12% of organizations had 12% of organizations had a CDO. Today, 83.2% of organizations have a CDO. And this really kind of showcases how now organizations think of data and AI as a codified practice within their organization. They no longer treat it as a nice to have, it is a must have, where the data organization is represented in the board. Additionally, of course, generative AI is now a top priority for organizations, definitely not surprising. 62.3% claim investments in generative AI are top priority for them, and 90% of organizations are increasing investments in generative AI. However, only 50% of organizations have the talent to place in place to implement generative AI. And this segues to the fourth point, which is a consistent issue organizations have been struggling with, is that in order to be able to reap the benefits of AI, organizations need to have organization-wide data literacy and a data culture. And According to most organizations, to most leaders, the biggest blocker to becoming data driven has always been culture, people, and process. So, for example, if you look at in 2019, 92.5% of organizations claim that the biggest blocker for them to become data driven is data literacy and data culture, with the number one being the number one cause for why organizations are not yet data driven. That is still the number one reason why organizations are not data driven, but only 77.6% of organizations in 2024 claim it is their biggest obstacle. It is still number one. So the majority of organizations are struggling to become data driven, not due to the technology investments that they've been making, but to their inability to scale a data culture, to build out skills across the organizations in data and AI. And this trend will continue if there is no turnaround the organizations do when it comes to data and AI literacy. So what we wanted to do is further understand here the state of data and AI literacy within organizations. So what we did is we wanted to answer questions for ourselves. So what we did is that we commissioned a survey in January of 2024 with 564 leaders based in the UK and the US from varied functions such as data analytics, business intelligence, HR, L&D, digital transformation and change management, finance, accounting, sales, and marketing, only for medium to large enterprises from a variety of industries and a variety of seniority, with the least senior being a middle manager and the most senior being someone who is a proprietor or on the board. And out of these 564 plus leaders, we wanted to ask them questions such as what generative AI means for them and their teams, their biggest data and AI upskilling challenges, their biggest skill gaps, how they approach learning, what type of learning program for them is the most successful, how they've gotten value if they are doing learning from data and AI literacy, and how they think about the future of data and AI skills, and a lot more, which we'll cover in the report and the presentation as well. So with that, let's get started and jump into these major findings from the State of Data and AI Literacy Report in 2024. Richie will be sharing the report directly in the chat, as well as in the resources section. So make sure to tune in for that if you haven't seen it. So let's first talk about the data and AI literacy skill gap. I saw that earlier slide of only how 50% of organizations have talent in place to, experiment with generative AI, right? And how, 77% of organizations in 2024 blame lack of skills, people issues, cultural issues as the main culprits for why they are not able to become data driven. So what we wanted to do is understand further on what that data and AI literacy skill gap means for organizations. So first thing out of the bat, 57% of organizations believe they have a data literacy skill gap. And what's interesting is that it's up 3% from last year's report, which means that we haven't necessarily done massive progress as an industry as a whole in bridging the data literacy gap, or that the goalpost is shifting. That now, as organizations are further making investments here, their expectations of what data literacy is also increasing. The additional thing as well is that 62% of leaders believe their organization has an AI literacy gap, which is something that we asked for the first time this year. And when looking at how the importance of these skills has increased in the past 5 years, 4 of the top 7 fastest growing skills were data and AI skills for leaders. So the ability to manage projects, for example, is the number one most fastest growing skills for leaders. However, data science, business intelligence, basic AI literacy, and basic data literacy are all in the top 7 skills that have been growing in the past 5 years. So, for example, data science, 43% of leaders think that data science is the most important skill, has grown the most important for their team in the past 5 years, which if you compare with 2023, the same question that we asked, it's up 6% year over year. Business intelligence at 42% is up 1% year over year. Basic AI literacy, which is a new addition that we added to the survey this year, is deemed extremely important, has grown the most important for their team for 40% of leaders, and 9% as well for data literacy. And when you think about how leaders, the value leaders place on these skills, because we talked about how 57% of organizations believe they have a data literacy skill gap and 62% on AI literacy. What is the value that they're looking to? What is the value that they attribute these skills? So we asked them, uh, when hiring someone new, I'm willing to pay a higher salary to a candidate who has good data literacy skills over a candidate who does not. And essentially, up to 72% of leaders agree that they are willing to pay a salary premium for employees with data skills. And for AI literacy, it's around 63%, or actually, yeah, 60%. And when you see here these metrics, is that almost 60% of leaders are willing to pay a higher premium for AI skills, and 72% are willing to pay for data literacy skills. And when you ask them, how much are you willing extra to pay? At least 40% of leaders are willing to pay 20% extra. So naturally, for a lot of leaders today, it's one impossible to fill the gap by just simply providing more compensation. As one, there is a limited supply of candidates, and two, it's an unsustainable business strategy. So um, the second way leaders are looking to fill that gap is through upskilling, which we'll explore further on in the report. That said, what I wanted to outline even more here before we go to that is the data and AI skills leaders need from their teams. So if you think about the top data skills, we're not talking here necessarily about AI skills, the top data skills leaders need from their teams. It's really interesting to see how the most important skills leaders need from their team are not necessarily, hardcore data engineering, programming, or machine learning skills. It's in fact, what is can be considered under the remit of basic data literacy. Data-driven decision making is without a doubt the most important skill leaders need from their team, with 83%, actually 93% of leaders thinking it's between somewhat important to very important, and that's up 6% year over year. Interpreting, the ability to interpret data visualizations is also quite important for leaders, with 46% of leaders deeming it extremely important, 37% deeming it important, and then 12% deeming it somewhat important. And that's up 9% year over year in terms of its importance. Data analysis and manipulation, which is the ability to kind of manipulate data, get insights from them, is also really important for leaders. And creating data visualizations as well is an essential skill set. And if you think about these skills, anyone, regardless of their tool belt, can adopt these skills. Whether you use Excel, to whether you use Python, R, or business intelligence tools, these skills are table stakes when it comes to the ability to work with data. And then we see more tool-based skills that are needed. Business intelligence is at number 5. Programming skills is absolutely at the bottom. But if you look at it from a numbers perspective, 20% of leaders think programming skills are extremely important for their team, right? 23% they think it's important. So at least 43% think it's at least important or extremely important. And then if you add 24% that think it's somewhat important, right, leaves us with around 66% of leaders who think 66% of leaders who think that it's a programming that think programming is an important skill set. And here we're talking only about data skills. But however, what we want to discuss a bit more as well, given the type of skills we've seen, or the conversation of skills we've seen around AI literacy, is what are the top AI skills leaders need from their teams. And what was surprising here, at least from my perspective, is we often talk about prompt engineering being the most important skill leaders need, or individuals need to learn, or that the prompt engineer is that next killer job as an advent of generative AI. The data doesn't seem to suggest that. If you think about it, by reading here, kind of the top 5 skills leaders need from their team, basic understanding of AI concepts. So think AI awareness is the most important AI skill leaders need from their team? They just need to have a team that understands how AI systems operate so that they are able to know how to use them effectively. Second one is that responsible AI and ethical AI is an extremely important skill set as well, because it's natural to think that anyone who is using an AI system at work needs to make sure that they have the skills necessary to effectively avoid one, a harmful outcome to their stakeholders, their colleagues, and two, that they do not risk company data. Um, Three is basic understanding of how AI can be applied in business is quite important because if you think about how organizations today are rolling out AI use cases, there will always be maybe not a data translator but an AI translator, someone who sits at the intersection of technology teams and the business that can drive those use cases forward. And on the fourth most important skill is prompt engineering, which is while still important if you look at the numbers, so around 80%, maybe 79%, 81% of leaders think it's somewhat important to very important. um, it's not deemed as important as other skills here, which is quite counterintuitive. Moreover, on the fifth skill of developing AI systems from scratch, only 67% of organizations think this is a somewhat to quite important skill here. So definitely organizations today, as we are relatively early in the state of AI maturity within the technology space in general, um, just understanding of AI concepts and understanding of ethical best practices of AI will take you so far in your AI literacy journey. So then we ask leaders, what are the risks of not developing data skills? And because we wanted to understand is how are leaders perceiving the risks of not developing data skills versus the risks of not developing AI skills, so that we are able to understand the relationship between data and AI skills. When we ask leaders to point what are the biggest risks their team or department faces if they do not have adequate data skills, um, we look at inaccurate and slow decision making as the biggest risks data skills teams face if their teams do not have adequate data skills. So you look at inadequate decision making, slow decision making, decreased productivity, and lack of innovation as the top four um, most important risks from not developing a uh, a adequate data skills within teams. But if you look at AI skills, for example, the main culprit, the thing that leaders are afraid of the most, is lack of innovation, decreased productivity, and inability to catch up to the competition. So what this points us to is that in a lot of ways, data skills enable decision-making capabilities within teams, and AI skills enable innovation capabilities within teams. However, as we've seen in the past, slide here on um, ethics and understanding of responsible AI best practices or basic understanding of AI concepts, data skills and AI skills are quite intertwined because to be able to understand AI systems, you need to understand how data works, how data flows within the organizations, how AI models are trained on data, the type of data that is sourced. And if you're using, for example, AI systems to work with data, basic understanding of data literacy is extremely essential. So with that said, let's focus on, we talked about the AI literacy and data literacy skill gap. We talked about what are the most important data and AI skills. Let's talk about how leaders are bridging the data and AI skills gap, because ultimately, as we mentioned, leaders will not be able to hire their way out of the data and AI skills gap. So if we look at the left here on how different data leaders are approaching the data literacy skill gap. So we're not talking about AI skills here. We're just talking about data training. 35% of organizations are offering all employees some form of data training, which is definitely a step up from last year. I think last year is 29%. If we look at though, 12% of organizations do not offer any form of data training. 29% offer to data roles or data experts, and 20% only offer training for non-data experts. However, if you look at AI skills, the AI literacy skills are definitely behind the curve of data skills. At 20%, organizations do not offer any form of AI training. only employees in some data roles, that's 20%, and then 18% only some training. Only employees outside of technical roles receive training, and then only 25% of organizations are offered some form of AI training. And what's interesting though is that, while we look at here the lay of the land and understand how organizations are bridging the skills gap and the kind of the scale of their training programs, what we wanted to do is further understand what is the ROI or the use that they've been getting from upskilling. So we asked organizations who either have data upskilling or AI upskilling how their organization has benefited from data or AI training. And what we've seen are the top areas organizations have benefited from is one, quality of decision making. So 26% of organizations have seen complete transformations of the quality of decision making of the people that got upskilled. 27% saw significant improvements. 22% slightly improved, and 25% either do not know or did not improve. Similarly, on speed of decision making, we've seen here a similar amount of folks who have had complete transformations or significant improvements. Innovation has improved, customer experience has improved, employee retention has improved, and cost reduction and revenue have improved as well. Now, that said, what we wanted to see as well is the connection between this slide, where we talk about the benefits of data and AI upskilling, and the size of the training program. So what is the relationship between the size of the training program and the degree of benefits you can expect from data and AI upskilling? So when we looked at folks who answered completely transformed, right? If you look at here, for example, quality of decision making, 26% of folks across the board said that their organization was completely transformed as a result of data and AI training when it comes to quality of decision making. So if you look at quality of decision making, 26% of folks experience a complete transformation regardless of data and AI training programming size. But organizations with either a mature data or AI training program, so think here, organization-wide data or AI training program, experience a 40% complete transformation. And when you run the numbers on aggregate, organizations are 159% on average more likely to experience completely transformational outcomes from if they have an organization-wide upskilling program rather than having a localized upskilling program, which really shows the importance and the value of organization-wide upskilling. Now, the additional question we wanted to ask from leaders on how they are approaching the skill gap is what would best describe how they approach data and AI training within their organization? So 30% of leaders point to blended learning as the most important way or the most prevalent way they've been approaching data and AI upskilling, which is the method we definitely recommend, which is a combination of online training and instructor-led sessions. 18% do not offer any form of training. 18% of folks only deliver third-party online-based training providers. 17% create their own training. 10% do only instructor sessions, and 7% point to other ways that they approach that. When we asked those who only use third-party online-based training, so whether they have a blended learning program or they only use online learning programs, we asked them, what are their biggest challenges from using an online platform? Number one, video-based only courses makes it difficult to apply learned skills in the real world, which is, of course, something, at DataCamp, we've definitely proud of the learning experience that we've created where individuals are able to learn by doing, because data skills at the end of the day are hands-on skills, not theoretical skills only. Second thing is inability for employees to understand where to start learning. So curation of content is extremely important. 24% of leaders point that the skills people learn are not relevant for their role. So the ability to personalize content for the role of the department is essential. Inability to report ROI on learning is also a major problem organizations have when it comes to a third-party online provider. And last but not least, lack of certifications for learners is also an essential blocker towards using third-party providers. So let's break those down a bit more. And I want to talk about here about active learning. Uh, Active learning is extremely important for building confidence with data skills. Data skills are quite hands-on. They require the ability to not only understand a concept, but to experiment at scale. And here I'm showing GIFs of one of our Python courses as well as one of our conceptual courses. It's really important the ability to experiment with code and to actively think about the problem that you're dealing with, because ultimately data skills and programming skills and AI skills are not just conceptual skills, but they are also need to be applied within the flow of work. Uh, Second, let's talk about as well the problem with video-based learning when it comes to tracking skills progress, right? Uh, the ability to have skill progress reporting is essential for data and AI upskilling, because at the end of the day, being able to sustain the program of data and AI upskilling within your organization requires the ability to prove ROI and the ability to track skills evolution over time. For example, with DataCamp skill matrix, you're able to do by department, by individual, the ability to see how skills are evolving across key dimensions, whether Python programming, machine learning skills, and that are tailored for the team and the department. Now, last but not least is curated skill paths. Um, so first three results that you see here, I think, are from Udemy, Coursera, and EDX, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so if you just search for Introduction to Python, on Udemy, you get 10,000 results. On Coursera, you have 168 results. And Introduction to Python and EDX gets you 57 results, which is, I think, a emblematic of the trade-off between curation and volume. Curation is much more essential if you need folks to get started and know immediately what they need to learn. So on DataCamp, for example, we have one course on Introduction to Python that is taught by Hugo Ban Anderson, and that is really focused on getting you to get at least an introductory knowledge of Python. And we also have curated skill paths by the ability to create custom tracks. More importantly, as well, when it comes to certification, right, are essential for creating a sense of rewards and building credentials. So we also have our set of certifications, whether data analyst, data engineer, data scientist, AI associate, AI fundamentals, and data literacy fundamental certifications. We highly recommend that you check out our certifications page. Now, with that, section covered and the main insights that we've uncovered from the data literacy report shared, I wanted to also share some of the best practices from leaders, from DataCamp for business customers, leaders that we've spoken to on the DataFrame podcast, that are at the forefront of the data and AI upskilling revolution. And again, folks, do make sure to ask any questions that you have. We'll make sure to have time for questions at the end. And more importantly, make sure to read the report for way more additional insights, a lot of useful commentary from DataFrame guests, the DataCamp for business customers, and a lot more experts from the data and AI industry. So with that said, let's talk about 5 lessons for building your team's data and AI literacy that we've also gathered in the report. The first um, the first one being expanding your existing data upskilling program to also focus on AI literacy. I'm fairly certain there's a lot of DataCamp for business customers here on this webinar, a lot of folks who have existing data upskilling programs. And if you're looking at how can we make sure that we're also covering our bases when it comes to AI skills, what's essential is that you don't have a parallel program, is that you expand the data program to focus on AI literacy. For example, in last year's report, one of the things that we share as well is a data competency framework. So this framework, for example, we've been using it with our own internally in how we think about skills, but also how we think about skills for our DataCamp for business customers. And last year, we had these skills that you see here, mostly focused on data literacy. However, this year, as we were looking to expand our framework and help our customers navigate the AI skills transformation needs that they have, we added these new skill sets from AI applications for business, understanding AI concepts, working and steering with AI systems, responsible AI, developing AI systems. Um, this framework is definitely available not only in this slide but also in the state of data literacy report, and you can download the framework as a downloadable PDF and slide that you can edit for yourself in case you have any needs within your organization. Richie will be sharing the slides, the links in the resources section. We'll also make sure to share this framework in the follow-up email as well, so make sure to register for the event. Now, I want to show a great example of this, jumping from data literacy to AI literacy within the same program from our partners at Colgate-Palmolive. Colgate has been using DataCamp for Business to upskill more than 14,000 employees on data literacy. And when ChatGPT was released, and there was a lot of conversation and chatter about the importance of enabling the organization on AI literacy, they quickly shifted the program as well to make sure that there are AI skill paths within the DataCamp for Business platform that are available to all folks at Colgate, from courses on ChatGPT, AI literacy, how to monetize AI. They made sure that folks from C-suite executives to general employees have AI literacy skill paths. Now, the second lesson that I can share here is widening your upskilling program. We talked about the connection between the scale of the learning program and the ROI you can expect to receive. I'll kind of remind you of these two slides here of how, regardless of your upskilling program, you will see improvements in your the quality of decision making, your speed of decision making, and innovation from data and AI upskilling. But to see transformational outcomes, mature data and AI training programs that include everyone within the organizations are extremely useful for driving transformational outcomes across these key skill sets. Now, the third lesson I want to share here is interactivity. We talked about the importance of the, learning modality, whether blended learning, third-party learning providers. What's really important is that you center interactivity and personalization at the heart of your learning program. And what that means here is, investing in a platform that has active learning, for example, such as DataCamp. There are other organizations and other edtech platforms that also, have some form of interactivity embedded in them. But also really focusing on community and engagement. So beyond interactivity and just the learning modality, how can you build community and engagement within your learning program? So, for example, at Specsavers, right, they are a DataCamp for Business customer. They worked with our customer success team to launch competitions using our competitions feature. So it was, hackathons using DataCamp Data Lab, where they were able to get folks excited about solving a business problem using data and AI. And they were able to learn through the problem through that participation. And by working on these competitions and learning on DataCamp, they were able to reach a point where they were able to save time on certain processes and tasks that were automated by saving up to 4 hours of weekly time per employee upskilled. So some quick tactics here for adding interactivity and personalization. So for interactivity, host instructor-led sessions with internal experts, or a organization that can help you launch these types of bootcamp style sessions. At DataCamp, we help organizations as well with that, and create case studies that help them solve real-world case scenarios. Integrate gradable capstone exercises at the end of your learning tracks. Incorporate gamification elements such as leaderboard badges or rewards to make learning engaging. And then quick tactics for better personalization. Establish sub-communities within your learning community. So, for example, if marketing folks are learning data skills, create a marketing analytics community, or organize lunch and learns with your chief data officer or your VP of AI. Or incorporate relevant industry or department focused resources into your upskilling program, such as the Data Frame podcast or our weekly webinars. So the ability to contextualize data and AI skills to a personal setting, whether through your own function, whether by meeting external experts or internal experts within your organization, or by contextualizing it to uh, hearing about what the chief AI officer at Airbnb or chief data science officer at Airbnb is doing, is quite important. The fourth skill here I'm going to share is to treat AI literacy like a force multiplier for your data upskilling program. And I'll show this here with one slide here because I think it's a really essential concept to showcase the connection between data skills and AI skills. In the data literacy report, 73% of leaders believe that generative AI will reduce the barrier to entry for working with data. I'll be very honest. I have a coding background. I create code alongs and content, but I am not a coder at heart. It's hard for me to get back in the zone of creating code, and I haven't actually built code in the past few years. That said, using something like DataCamp, Data Lab, or even ChatGPT for data workflows is incredible because it really reduces the barrier to entry to getting something operational. However, because I have the data literacy skills to be able to challenge a model when it comes to providing an output, I'm able to navigate the code much more effectively. And a great example here comes from our podcast with the Chief Operating Officer of GitHub, Carl Daigle, who mentioned while all of these tools are extremely helpful for coding, you still have to start with asking the right questions, and you have to find a trail of questions and go down that trail. And if you can't find the trailhead, you're not going to go far in that journey. Now, last best practice is being proactive about change management and positive reinforcement. I'd love to learn here in the chat who has any fears about AI. I'm personally afraid about AI in a lot of ways, even though I'm also excited about it. With any major tectonic change in the economy or in the skills or in the technologies that we use, there is natural trepidation within the organization about um, what change means. So what's really important is being proactive about change management, your culture, and making sure that you create psychological safety for those that you want to get upskilled on data and AI literacy. So one, clarify the what's in it for me for a lot of your population that needs to be learned. So think about, for example, how it will help their careers, why they need to become more competitive. Uh, think about being proactive about addressing their concerns. Celebrate anyone who's an early adopter of data and AI skills. Build decentralized networks of champions. So if you have these early adopters, have them spread the word within their own team in their own department. And most importantly, make sure that leaders lead by example here. So with that, I think we've reached, we still have 10 minutes left. I'll add some closing notes and then we can start with some Q&A. When you think about, we had this webinar, I think in December of 2023, and Valerie Logan, who is one of my heroes in the data literacy space, talked about how we're still at year 3 in a 10-year wave of data skills and data literacy transformation, and I think AI literacy even adds another dimension to this. And I really want to, a lot of the folks who are on this webinar, a lot of the folks who are interested in this topic, a lot of the folks who are, that we've showcased throughout this session today, are really trailblazers in this space. So this is something to really important to think about. In a lot of ways, the playbook has not yet been written to be able to apply. And with that, I'll take some questions. I see that there's quite a bit of questions already. Okay. Question here from Awatif. Is there any assessment for data and AI literacy? You are in luck, Awatif. I highly recommend that you go to DataCamp assessments or DataCamp certifications as well, and you will be able to go through a track on data and AI fundamentals, and by the end, you'll be able to do an assessment where you'll get a badge, a mini certification on these topics. Can data and AI give the same salary or higher salary as compared to software development engineers? So that's a great question. And I think there are gradations here. It's in a spectrum of salary, right? If you're in a business role and you have data skills or AI skills, there's definitely an increase in salary that you can get for the same business role without data skills. A good example comes from a podcast that we had with Matt Siegelman, who is I think he's the president, or now at least the on the board of. He was the founder, but I don't know if he's actively the CEO, the president anymore of this organization. Um, but I forgot the name of their organization. But essentially, what they do is that they scrape all LinkedIn profiles and try to understand in real time the skills employers are looking to have. I think they're called Lighthouse. If I'm not, it could be wrong. Um, and essentially, what they do is that they scrape skills on all different job descriptions and job boards online, and they compare it with salary data, and they see how one skill could increase your salary. And they found, for example, for a marketing analyst role, SQL skills can get you up to 40% extra salary. Now, if you're a data and AI professional, if you're a data scientist, and compared to a software development engineer, I think your salary is most likely comparable, or depending on the organization, sometimes maybe even higher. But if you're a software engineer with strong machine learning skills and you're able to deploy ML models in production, or build data engineering pipelines, you're going to get paid really well in comparison to a run-of-the-mill software engineer. Another questions here. um, how does DataCamp define the project management skill? So we do not teach project management as a competency or a skill set within DataCamp. But in the case of data roles, the ability to manage projects here is especially focused for the data product manager role. And we have quite a few webinars and best practices on it. But essentially, it is the ability to plan effectively projects and make sure that they get delivered on time and on budget. Is it possible to measure data and AI literacy together rather than data and AI literacy separately? It's definitely possible. Uh, I would say that you can think of these skills as a Venn diagram of skills, right? So, for example, prompt engineering is a purely AI literacy skill set, but understanding AI applications for business has strong intersections with data literacy. Another question here. What is the current market trend in the AI industry and where is it heading? So, Ali, I think there's a lot of few different trends to look out for in the AI industry. I'm going to be a bit cheeky and not answer that question, but I will give something in return. I highly recommend that everyone signs up to DataCamp Radar 2024. If I'll share my screens here, we have folks such as Julien Simon from Hugging Face, Bar Moses, Ido Liberty from Pinecone, Prokalpa from Atlan, Thomas Tungush, Nick Alprin, CEO of Domino Data Lab, CEO of Fivetran, Chandra Donaldson, she's the Chief Data and AI Officer at the US Air Force. A lot of folks that can answer that same questions as what are the trends in the AI space. So I highly recommend that folks register for the session. Richie will be sharing the link in the chat. Another question here. What about a question here from Sandra? What about an adequate regulation legal framework for the application of generative AI? Um, I hope I'm understanding the question correctly. Is like, what are kind of legal frameworks for the application of generative AI? I think if you look at kind of the state of regulations today, probably the continent that is most ahead of the curve is Europe with the AI Act. We recently had a session on it with a couple of experts on AI regulations, but definitely understanding of the regulatory landscape is an incredibly important skill within generative AI, within AI literacy, and this comes down under like the use of responsible AI. This is a great question. How do we emphasize that Gen AI, while exciting and extremely useful for many tasks, should not be used as a source of truth due to its tendency and hallucination? I think that's an excellent question. And here, I think what's really important is to demystify AI as much as possible within the organization. One thing I like to say is that generative AI are just really good statistically, they're statistical parrots. So there's this really famous paper in the AI space called stochastic parrots, right, which talk about how generative AI systems parrot the most, statistically likely thing to that fits the prompt. And it's really important that folks know within the organization that generative AI systems are not otherworldly, um, godly machines that are a source of truth. And in fact, it's the human touch, the human ability to edit, and the human ability to understand how to leverage these systems that are much more important. And this kind of segues back as well. If you are able to nail this message that you are really needed to be able to use this technology effectively as a human, it actually helps in creating a proactive approach for addressing concerns. Question here from Paula. Um, I want to learn about AI to help my team adopt it. We do not know much. What course do you recommend to start take? The objective is to learn how to use it, not to program. You are in luck, Paula. I highly recommend that you check out our DataCamp AI Fundamentals skill track. This track is designed for folks with no technical experience. It's a theoretical course on understanding AI, introduction to ChatGPT, machine learning, LLM concepts, and generative AI concepts. We'll be sharing it in the chat. Also looking here. I don't see any other questions. That's a tough one. How do you envision the future of data and AI literacy in the next 5 years, and what are the potential opportunities and challenges that lie ahead? Okay. Um, that's a tough question. Uh, I do think that data and AI literacy will increasingly become more table stakes, not only within organizations to do effective work, but also as a species. If you think about, for example, with the speed of proliferation of generative AI tools and the ability to create fake news at almost zero cost, um, the ability to distinguish what is AI generated versus what is not is going to become, I think, an essential life skill, similar to how developing the eye for fake news was extremely essential 5 years ago versus today. I think on top of that as well, there is a real conversation to have on, what will actually be the impact of generative AI on the wider labor market, right? Will we see complete roles changing, and as a result, new roles being created that require, the ability to prompt and understand models, right? Or will AI just be, a slight productivity booster? I look at a lot of the, outside of coding tools, for example, which I think have been a game changer for me, and some writing tools. I don't see a lot of generative AI applications that have changed my life. Have you? I don't. I'm happy to stand corrected on this. But I think how answering that question requires um, can go in different directions depending on how the technology evolves over the next few years. So from Olinto, in my opinion, I believe that we can analyze data using AI through training of thought, that is refining ideas until we reach the necessary point. I do it with Baseless and Power BI, and the results have been excellent. I completely agree with ChatGPT and coding as well. That refinement iteration loop is extremely useful. One last question. how do I make my professional data analyst certification valuable to companies? That's an excellent question. I would put those skills that you've developed through the certification, build a portfolio, and make sure that you put it front and center on your CV, your LinkedIn profile, and like once you're in a team as well, evangelize it within the rest of the team if it has helped you. Um, I hope that answers your question, Beth. Okay, I think that is it for questions. If there are any additional questions, do make sure to send over a LinkedIn request. I'd love to be able to chat and connect. Make sure everyone to tune in for DataCamp Radar next week. We are all super, super excited. And again, for the champions, the seekers, the leaders, the team leaders, make sure to check out DataCamp for Business on how we can help your organization transform its data and AI literacy. And with that, I'll bid you a farewell, and we'll see you next week for DataCamp Radar.